Today we bring you
Reconstructing Spirit Hill.
So one of the things that we shared that brought us together a little bit was that we wanted, instead of to just buy a house and raise a family in a neighborhood, we wanted to actually establish a homestead that would be around for our children for generations, or basically a place that's a lot more special than just your average neighborhood. Cul-de-sac. Yeah.
Yes, right there, right there. Close it. You got it. So, in Charlie's line of business, one of his many talents, he had come across this piece of property. At the time, I was down in Pinehurst because that is where I was working, and it's where Moore County was where I had just kind of made it my bread and butter, more or less. Kaya and I had our own little small unit family, and Charlie had his son. I don't know how you'd explain that, like northeast of Raleigh. We drove a lot, a long time.
Actually, I drove a lot,
Yes.
most of the time, just to see each other. So we were looking for a place that was kind of in between Pinehurst and Youngsville. So in our searches, I was actually trying to find something more or less between Raleigh and Pinehurst because I worked in Raleigh, and I was looking at pieces of land that were maybe 10 acres or more, which is very difficult to find around here.
Yeah, and even more difficult to find without the long needle pines, because I'm sorry, I can't stand them. They are junky to me, and I don't know, I just don't like them.
She likes oaks.
I like hardwoods and hills and just land with character. No, but I love North Carolina. I love the diversity that I can find the beach in 2 hours one direction and the mountains 2 hours another direction. But for living, I wanted to find something other than sand, but not, straight rock face.
So we know we weren't going to the mountains. We knew we weren't going to the beach. Ironically, we're right in the center of the mountains and the beach, as well as Raleigh and Pinehurst, in this little itty bitty town called Goldston.
It's a gold mine.
It's actually a coal mine.
Well, I was just being funny.
So Goldston, when we found this property, I was looking for the 10 acre plus tracts for less than $500,000. And we found this property with an old, I guess at the time it was an 1,800 square foot house, built circa 1900s, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. And it was in great shape.
I love old houses and old things. I am all for preservation and trying to recover our heritage or elements of our heritage. And whenever he sent me the little MLS link for this place, I did not foresee it being salvageable. Part of that was poor advertising on the person's part. The other part was just, it really needed a lot of work. I passed up this option. I told him to keep looking, and so he did, but he also came to look at it himself because he just couldn't get it out of his mind, I guess, that
So it was really about 3 months later, but I decided to come out and take a look at the property myself because I just couldn't find anything else with the acreage that we wanted. And this was nearly 30 acres of land for $180,000. So I had to see it. And when I drove out here, I just kind of bypassed the gates and went out into the fields. And what I saw were just these beautiful rolling hills, ponds in the back. I'm a real visionary, so the house wasn't that big of a concern to me, but the rest of the property was absolutely gorgeous. A little overgrown, it hadn't really been maintained for about 20 years, but I mean, it was something that I could visualize my beautiful wife absolutely falling in love with. So I just went home and convinced her that she had to come see the property.
And I did. I had very conflicting thoughts whenever I first took a look around at this place because yes, it was extremely overgrown. The fields weren't terrible because they were using them for hay, I believe, right? Somebody was haying them?
Occasionally.
Yes, so the fields weren't terrible, but everything else, the entire infrastructure was chaotic or falling apart. But whenever we got into the house and saw the grand ceilings and the intricate detailed elements and history behind the house, it was just, I was a sucker for that kind of stuff. So it changed my perspective. And then as Charlie was saying, you walk out into the pasture and oh my gosh, like how did something like this come to exist where I thought it was just like the flat sand hills? It was all hardwoods, all except for like, I don't know, I'd say maybe 10 trees, maybe out of like hundreds. I don't know, it was insane. But there was so much potential and so much beauty just waiting to like pop out,
So here we were, we found this pretty awesome property and it was in the town of Goldston. And
kind of, it's technically Goldston, but it's not in town. Like this is definitely country.
But yeah, but Goldston's country. I mean, if you blink driving through the town, you're gonna miss it.
No, because you have to turn.
Depending on what direction.
That's true.
There's one turn.
Yep.
No stoplight. One stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
Probably multiple stop signs, but nobody uses them. So, I don't.
It was a railroad, it looks like it was a railroad town because there's, you know, the old, you know what I'm talking about, the small town railroad towns that it's literally the railroad and there are buildings on the right and on the left, just like this much. That's what it is. It's like an old whistly town, but I don't know.
Interestingly enough, Goldston, which is also part of Gulf, they were old coal mining towns and railroad towns, but Charlie Daniels actually grew up in Gulf and went to Goldston High School. So he's like the main celebrity of our town. It is an awesome town.
Mm-hmm. There's actually like the side of a building that is painted in memory, or like not in memory, that is painted in honor. That is painted in honor of Charlie Daniels. So if you are watching, we are enjoying the same atmosphere that you did growing up.
So long story short, we decided to put in an offer, and we did not at all offer full price on this property. It is way too much work that needed to be done to it. It did have a couple wells on the property, but we weren't even sure if those worked, and it had been vacant for a very long time, so we weren't sure what condition anything was in, the environmental condition of the property. Once we put the offer in, it just opened the door to a whole new ball game once it was accepted, because we had to start off with figuring out how to finance the property. And financing a property that is as old as this house was, unlivable, with 30 acres of land, is nearly impossible, but it is not completely impossible. We figured out some loan programs that worked, and if you watch one of the videos at the bottom of this video, we've posted some links on how to find property, things to look for, the different types of financing that are available for it, and other different tips of things that we've done that were discussed in this video. One of the first things you do when you're financing a property is you do your property inspection, and you're thinking, why would you inspect a property that is halfway falling down? Okay, so the inspectors came out and they started looking around underneath the house, and they found a baby vulture. Not like this vulture. And it was basically just like this fuzzy little penguin looking thing. So there's this little fuzzy vulture running around underneath the house, hissing at the inspector. He thought it was like a raccoon or something, scared the pants off the guy. The way that the vultures had gotten into the house was there was a closet. The way that the house used to be set up is on either side of the fireplaces in each room there were these closets, and there was a hole in the side of the house about so big and about the same size in the floor of the closet, and so they were coming in through the side of the house, going down through the floor in the closet, and then the crawl space of the house pretty much become a vulture nesting ground.
It's a little bit intimidating coming into a house that you are considering purchasing to know that it's, home to things like vultures.
Well, it's not just vultures. I mean, we have coyotes and bobcats and...
No, but not living in the house. For there to be vultures living in your home, that's a little bit of a stand back moment.
We had a lot of snakes in the attic, like snake skins galore.
I heard that.
Yeah. I hate snakes. So, the vultures were kind of an interesting experience. We had two. Rufus was the youngest of the two, and we called him Rufus because he liked to fly up and perch himself on the roof of the house. And then the other one's name?
Dodger.
Dodger.
Because he was dodgy.
Yeah.
He was not as friendly as Rufus.
But eventually we were finally able to close on this thing, which was quite the achievement. But once we closed on the house, it kind of was a lot more fun because we could actually tear into things without having to worry about anybody else.
Yeah, that first night we actually stayed we got, Kaya and Ben, and we came to the house. There was no electricity at the time, so we had little lanterns, and we had come into the house and set up shop more or less. We had crowbars in hand and little either bandanas or masks, because you do need to be safe. You don't know what you're going to encounter as far as what kind of mold or debris you could be ingesting. So we were trying to take all precautions, and we just started making it home. We were just tearing into things, and we even had the neighbor across the street come and check things out because they saw lights flashing in the house, and no one had occupied the place for 15, 20 years, so they thought that there were rebel children coming to do some damage, which good on them for checking, but
we were partying pretty hardcore, so it made sense. And so we would invite you to stay tuned to figure out more about how we renovated the house, the kind of fun things we found on the house. I mean, our barn in and of itself was like a
gold mine,
junkyard gold mine, if there is such a thing. And the house, just the architecture of it originally, and how we were able to use some of that in our final renovations. But this is Reconstructing Spirit Hill. We had a lot of fun with it. He has a lot of fun living here, and we hope you enjoy our episodes.